Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another installation of Pro Tabletop. Today we are going to be changing things up a little bit. This is not a full battle report or anything. This is a new series called Test That List. And what this is going to be focused around is going to be testing a list before you go to a tournament. Usually you do this kind of stuff, when you play with your friends before a tournament, things like that. But a lot of times you want to do this before you paint. Right? You don't want to buy all these models, build them all, paint them all, have it all ready to go, and then play in a tournament and say, wow, that list really didn't work. So there's a lot of steps that go into getting a list ready. And as these new models and these new rules keep coming out, we want to be able to turn around how these units and these lists work together before you guys go and put them in a tournament atmosphere. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using some models that are not fully painted. They are at least going to be built and primed and everything like that, but some will not be fully painted. So don't mind that. Again, this is testing a list. So yeah, let us know how you like the format, what you'd like to change, and without further ado, let's get into the lists. So the first list that we have here is going to be a pure Harlequin list. This is going to be a 2,000 point game, and this is going to be a single battalion list. I'm going to be ending up with 9 CP, and we'll go over how we're going to spend that CP as well. A lot of Harlequin lists are very CP hungry, but I have found that having a couple extra CP during the game typically ends up being better than maybe buffing up a couple characters or spending more on relics or pivotal roles and things like that. So it's really a give and a take, and it's more what your flavor is. If you can play a game and not spend a lot of CP, you might want to spend 1 or 2 more pre-game based on what characters and what relics and pivotal roles you want. So to start this list off, we're going to start off with the Shadow Seer. The Shadow Seer is going to have an extra CP spent for an extra pivotal role to start off. So he is going to have, for his pivotal roles, Shield from Harm and Veil of Illusion. So he is going to give a bubble for -6 inches to shooting, everything within that bubble. And then he is also going to give a -1 to wound for infantry. So that's really important against if you have a heavy infantry list, like I do currently for this one. Then he is also going to have a relic of the Shadow Stone, and so that is going to make his bubbles go from 6 inches to 9 inches, and on top of that, it's going to extend his psychic powers an additional 3 inches. Now, as we get into his psychic powers, he's going to have Twilight of Pathways, so this is to be able to double move something, and usually it's only a 3-inch range, so now that's going to make it a 6-inch range. That's huge. Having those extra 3 inches to be able to move something again is just a really big advantage. I've found super big success, so I really like that in my list. And then I like to give him Veil of Tears, and this is basically you're picking an infantry unit within 18 inches, so this would make that 21 inches, but typically they're going to be within his bubble, so it's okay, and it's going to make them -1 to hit. So now you have an infantry squad, you can make -1 to hit and -1 to wound. That's just makes people not want to shoot at them. And you can use a stratagem to give them a 3-up invuln. So now you've got these big troops that are just really hard to kill. The next HQ we're going to go into is going to be a Troop Master. This Troop Master is going to be pretty basic. He's going to have his base pivotal role of the Choreographer of War. I can't say that word very well, which is going to allow wounds in combat within a 6-inch bubble to reroll all of your wounds. I think that's very important to have that for lots of reasons, especially with a combat army. Then he's going to have an Embrace, and he's just going to have a Shuriken pistol. So I usually like to take Troop Masters with a Fusion pistol, but this guy is kind of hanging back, just buffing people for mid and late game. And then the Troop Master that is more or less my frontline Troop Master, he is going to be super buffed. So he's going to have his base pivotal role, Choreographer of War, which is going to be rerolling the wounds for all the friendly mask units within 6 inches. He is then going to also have Darkness Bite, which after he fights, you can select an enemy unit that he made an attack against, and they're going to suffer 2 mortal wounds. This is really big if you're going against like a character that has an invuln save, and they make some saves and they have 1 or 2 wounds left. You're going to clean them up pretty easily. Then he is going to have the relic, the Twilight Fang, which is going to give him a Strength 5 weapon, a -3 AP, flat 2 damage, and he's going to get extra attacks for every battle round. So he's going to start off with 5 attacks, go to 6, 7, 8, and so on and so forth. he is also the Warlord. And the Warlord for this is going to be that he can disembark from a transport even after it moved. So, yeah, he's going to keep up with, a 10-man unit that you're going to double move, and he's going to buff them to be able to reroll wounds, and he's going to hit hard in combat. So he's kind of super buffed up. And that does it for the HQ. Then you go into troops. I have got 3 10-man troop squads, and really the only difference between these is going to be the weapons. I've got one with embraces, I've got one with kisses, and one with caresses. The reason for that is depending on what your matchup is, one of those squads is going to be more important to fight and do good against the matchup, so you can use that squad to kind of spearhead and take out whatever you want, whether you need the AP or you need the multi-damage. That's kind of what it is. Then I've got 3 smaller squads. 2 of them are going to be fusion squads. They're going to have 5 fusion guns and 2 embraces. So you're going to have 2 5-mans with 5 fusion and 2 embraces. The reason for the close combat weapons is so that if you need to go and go into a couple Marines or a 5-man scout or something that's small on an objective, you have that extra AP, you have those extra things that are going to hit a little harder to be able to clean up a few models. And then I have a 5-man unit that is going to be pretty basic. It does not have any fusion. It just has 2 embraces. So this is kind of the squad that's going to help do objectives, like deploy scramblers, sit there on objectives, raise banners, things like that. But they also have the ability of going in and cleaning some stuff up if they need to. Then we go into the elites. I've got a Death Jester in this, and he's got the Humbling Cruelty ability, so I can shoot at something so it can't have Overwatch and can be minus 2 inches to move. It becomes very important against a lot of lists. Some lists like, Tower Ultramarines where they can shoot with multiple things, or even Salamanders. It's not as useful, but to take away Overwatch from something that can shoot a lot at you is very important. Then we go into the fast attack. I've got 3 squads of 3 Skyweavers, all with Haywire and Zypher Glaive. So they can shoot, they can fight in combat, they can do everything. I like running them in 3-mans instead of 5-mans because I don't really buff them with stratagems. I use them more for my backfield, shooting vehicles, cleaning up stuff that's going to outflank, and I focus more on the 10-mans to use my stratagems. And then to round it up, we've got dedicated transports. We've got 4 Star Weavers, and they've got 2 Shuriken cannons each. So these are going to be imperative in moving my troops around the board, holding objectives. And then when it comes to mid or late game, as those 10-man squads whittle down, they can jump back into the boats and they can get around the board and be even more vital of holding those objectives. So that does it for the Harlequins.
All right, everyone, this is Thomas Bird. I'm here to go over my Ultramarine list. Today I'm running Rowboat Gilliman in a Supreme Command detachment and a battalion headed up with lots of Invader ATVs. So if you want to know all about Invader ATVs, are they good? Are they the new meta? Are they great? We'll see today in what that battle is. But so why Gilliman? If you're playing Ultramarines, in the new Marine book, he got a good treatment. He stayed the same points. He kept most of his rerolls. He actually has some rerolls for non-core units. He gives you command points, so just taking him as your warlord gives you +3 command points. So you're starting out with 15 before you buy. And he's just a force multiplier. He can buff other units. He can fight. He's a bully in combat. He can get back up. He's got 3 up and vulnerable save. If you haven't faced Gilliman, that guy's a beat stick. And if you use him right, he can win you games all by himself. So in the battalion, I have 2 HQs. I have a Primaris Chaplain on foot. I really wanted to take the bike guy. He looks fantastic. But he is expensive. And there are 2 values in the new Space Marine book for the command characters to be upgraded. Right now, until there's a fact, we're just kind of erring on the side of caution and using the more expensive values. So taking a +35 to make him a Master of Sanctity, points start running thin. So Chaplain on foot, make him a Master of Sanctity. He's going to take a relic, the Seal of Oath. That's an Ultramarine specific relic. I think if you ever played any Ultramarines, they're always taking this relic. It's just too good. Basically what the relic does, they've changed it slightly. Only core units can benefit with it, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But what it does is at the end of deployment, so after both armies have put all their units down, you pick one unit, and now you have an aura of 6 inches from this relic holder, so the chaplain, and every core unit or character gets to reroll all hits and all wounds against that chosen target. Now, if that target dies, you don't get it anymore, but it can let you get a nice reroll all hits, all wounds buff against a very powerful unit, or maybe a first strike, you want to kill something on the first turn that's deadly. Gives you a little extra boost though. So Seal of Oath is fantastic. And then he's going to take Heroes of the Chapter stratagem and make a warlord trait for himself. That'll give him Wise Orator. So just being Master of Sanctity, he's going to take 2 litanies instead of 1. Wise Orator warlord trait gives him kind of 2 buffs. Instead of rolling for 3s to get those litanies off, he's rolling for 2s. And then Wise, there's a special command stratagem that lets you kind of out of sequence auto pass 1 litany if you didn't do any litanies in the beginning of the battle round, or the command phase, I should say. And it costs 1 CP instead of 2. So that's a good warlord trait if you really are using a chaplain. So for today, his litanies are going to be +1 to hit, Litany of Focus, and +1 to wound the nearest shooting unit. So that's Litany of Fire, Catachinum Fire thing. Tigurius, he's the next HQ. He's going to be, Chief Librarian. He's really kind of big in the list. He's just a fantastic psyker all-around toolkit unit, just because his rules for re-rolling all psychic tests, even successful ones, he can re-roll it. Being able to cast 2, deny 2 with a +1 on each one, very good. If you have any psychers that are attacking you, you can have some denies. He very reliably gets his psychic powers off at +1. Good. So he knows 3 powers. So the powers you're going to take, I don't think anyone else is going to, you're going to choose any other powers than Marine powers here. You're going to take Might of Heroes. Slightly tweaked. It's only core and characters. So before I thought it was just core, but it does work on characters, so you can still cast it on Gilliman if he's going to go attack. Gives you +1 attack, strength, and toughness. And then No Zone, that's a slight tweak, so not as prevalent, but if you run into a unit that has a really tough invulnerable save, you can go in there and cast that No Zone and turn it off. You just have to be very careful now because it's an aura of 6 inches of everybody loses their invulnerable save, including yourself. So you don't want to run in there and turn Gilliman's invulnerable save off if you can help it. Last power is kind of key to the list, Psychic Fortress. Again, that's another reason why Tigurius is great, just to reliably get that power off. But that gives you a 6-inch aura of 5+ invulnerable saves to all chapter units. So everybody in the army, if they got a toe in, their unit will get a 5-up invulnerable save. So pretty big, especially for the buggies. It's not restricted to core, it's just units in the chapter. So they will get the 5-up invulnerable save as well. Going down the troop selection, we got 2 units of infiltrators, 5-man with a helix. The helix is a huge upgrade, super annoying for your opponent, super great for you. Basically every turn, so your turn and their turn, you get to ignore basically the damage for the first failed save. So if I shoot you with a las cannon, I fail my save, and you roll 6 damage, well guess what? That's the first failed save of the turn. I get to ignore that damage. I treat it as damage 0. So definitely infiltrators, definitely a great unit now. They're doing double duty. Blocking 12 inches from deep striking is pretty big in this day and age, especially with strategic reserves and stuff like eradicators and units that want to deep strike in for secondaries. They're great, but now just being able to be extra durable with that one big damage reduction each turn, so your turn and theirs. And then so 2 units of those, and then 1 big 10-man of intercessors. They have a power fist on the sergeant. So you kind of have dealer's choice here on what type of rifle. They've changed the rifles so they're all the same cost. Do you want the Assault 3 or do you want the Rapid Fire 1? It's really a question of anti-infantry. In this list, you want to really have something that's going to chew up big hordes of infantry. Do you want more shots, 30 shots, or do you want 20 shots? With Ultramarines, your super bonus is counting as stationary, so they're always basically shooting max shots. And you have stratagems to put them into that tactical doctrine if they're not. So you always can have that option to just shoot max shots at rapid fire. So it's just kind of up to you. Do you think AP1 is better or AP2 kind of in that tactical doctrine? So I'm going with the rapid fire for now. I feel like AP2 is more valuable to me in what armies I've seemingly play a lot. But the big thing about what makes them good is there's a 2 CP stratagem that works on them. At the end of the shooting phase, they basically get to shoot again. So having a big man unit to take advantage of that, pairing that up with the chaplain's litanies of +1 to hit and +1 to wound, really makes that unit damaging against a lot of units. Even if you're toughness 7 or 8, you can still pop off a lot of wounds. And then pairing that with the Seal of Oath, you can really dump a lot of bullets on a single target with pretty good AP -2. Next, on the elite section, I have 2 units of Victrix Guard and the Primaris Apothecary. So we'll get to the Apothecary in a second. The Victrix Guard, if you don't know about them, they're a special Ultramarine unit only. They are one of the few units that still retain their 3-up invulnerable save. They have Ultima Storm Shields instead of just regular Storm Shields, so they did not get the treatment of 4+ invulnerable and +1 to save that all the other Storm Shields got. They kept their 3+ invulnerable. Their stock unit is 2 guys, the 3 wounds each, and they have a 2+ armor save and a 3+ invulnerable save. So pretty good, just a 2-man unit. Their power swords, their 4 base attacks got upgraded to strength 5, so just 1 damage power swords. So kind of poor man blade guard as far as fighting, but 10 attacks on the charge from those 2 guys, very good. So a unit that's pretty durable, can clean up some chaff units or work on some Marines with AP3 power swords. But the big thing is they have the bodyguard rule. And if you haven't seen the bodyguard rule or you don't know what that is, Marines have access to it in their base book with the company veterans. A couple of the other chapters also got it. But basically, you cannot target a character as long as they're within 3 inches of a bodyguard unit with a ranged attack. Doesn't matter if they're the closest unit. Doesn't matter if the Victrix Guard only has 1 guy. Until that Victrix Guard is dead, you can't shoot at them. And that's really obnoxious. When you don't have to worry about screening, you could just put this kind of tough as nails 2+3+ guy right next to him out in the open. Rowboat could be standing out front. Guilliman could be standing literally the tip of the spear front of the army, and you can't shoot at them until you kill those Victrix. Now you say, well, I'm going to hide those Victrix behind a wall, so it's much more difficult to shoot at them. It gets even more difficult. So Victrix are fantastic. They did lose their ability to look out wounds. They used to have the bodyguard rule was they could take more wounds instead, but I think this is a way stronger mechanic. It can lead to a little bit of feel bad, so it'll be interesting to see if they maintain or keep that rule. But as it is, it definitely makes my characters much more survivable and more difficult to target, which has some knock-on effects, which are plus and minus later. So we'll kind of get into that. So Primaris Apothecary. So again, pairing this with the Invader ATVs is really obnoxious. But the big thing with the Primaris Apothecary is you upgrade him to a Chief Apothecary. And what that does is instead of healing for D3, actually what that does is lets him heal 2 units for free instead of 1. So he's healing up to 2 units within 3 inches for D3 wounds each. You buy him the Warlord trait Selfless Healer. That gives him to heal 3 flat instead of D3. So he's healing 2 units up to 3 damage per guy. And then he's giving out a 6-up Feel No Pain for all core, actually all units, all chapter units within 3 inches. He's giving out a 6-up Feel No Pain. So that's really where it works with the Invader bikes and all the infantry, right? So everybody that's a bike or infantry, he's giving them a 6-up Feel No Pain. So you give him a relic, the Voxus Spiritum, basically extend that range to a 6-inch bubble, so he's kind of core. Tigurius is popping the 5-up invulnerable save, that's a 6-inch aura. He's walking around with a 6-inch aura of 6-up Feel No Pain within 6 inches, so you kind of have your rock castle of everyone's got 5-up invulnerable, 6-up Feel No Pain if they need it. And then if they die, he can heal models for 3 wounds. But then now they've come out with the stratagem where he can auto bring a guy back. Since he's a Chief Apothecary, he can do it for free, where it normally costs 1 CP, so obnoxious. And he's not limited to core. He can bring back any model that's an infantry or bike. So again, pairing it with the ATVs is where it becomes a little silly. You bring back an 8 wound bike completely healed. It's very powerful. It makes those bikes difficult to shift. If you can't kill the bikes all in one go, it sometimes it's not even worth shooting at because you'll know that Apothecary is just going to just bring a whole bike back next turn for free. So that kind of rounds out the elites, and then kind of we've been talking about the ATVs going into the fast. We got 2 units of 3 ATVs, all with multi-meltas. So I had played a lot of test games with just 1 unit of ATVs. I wasn't really wanting to like the ATVs. I thought it was kind of dumb. I like the model. I mean, it's a really charged model. People either like it or hate it. But I was really running them with the onslaught cannons just for tons of bullets to kind of fill my anti-infantry role. But what I found was, since they're not core, they don't benefit from any kind of basic reroll, and they don't benefit from the chaplain litany. They don't benefit from the seal of oath relic. So they're kind of just like, you get what you get when you shoot at them. If you're suffering any minuses, it's not great. And the best they can get, their weapons are -1 or AP 0. So depending on what doctrine you're in, you're not getting tons of AP. It's just volume of fire. And I figured that will be good. But what I found was they're so difficult to kill, and the AP1 wasn't as relevant in most of my games as far as scary. People just ignored them and then went after the other parts of my army, which is not what I want. I want you to shoot the ATVs, right? So that limits the firepower you're shooting back at my other stuff that's scoring and winning me the game. So I needed to make them more of a threat. And in any Marine list, you're kind of thinking, well, what's handling anti-infantry? What's handling anti-tank? And you kind of go through all the options. And putting multi-meltas on here, just with the way they've upgraded multi-melta, even though you're not necessarily rerolling to hit, even though Guilliman does give reroll 1s to all Imperium units within 12 inches, so they do get a way to reroll. Most other armies won't be able to reroll anything. They're still getting, between the 2 units, 12 shots of multi-melta. I mean, that's pretty good. And the fact that they just don't die readily makes them, now they're a threat with multi-meltas. And that's what I kind of want to see today. Is it enough of a threat? Does it do enough damage? Can they live long enough? And will my opponent be forced to shoot at them and not shoot at my other stuff? So to round it out, I have one last unit. I went back and forth on it. I had a few points, tweaking different things. But I went ahead and put in a Devastator unit with Grav. There's no drop pod. It's interesting. It's just a walking on Grav unit. They can outflank, or they just typically hide near the bubble and just pop out. Sometimes you just need some AP3, AP4 multi-damage to kind of really do work on some heavy infantry. They got increased range to 30 inches, so it was really strong. And with the 2 wounds, making them 2 wounds each, just like a Primaris guy, they live a lot longer. And you're talking about Apothecary potentially bringing guys back. It could be pretty obnoxious. So just kind of a little backup unit to add a little bit more anti-infantry, some specific higher AP multi-damage if needed. I thought about taking some faster units or maybe some Inceptors with plasma. There's lots of choices there, but we're going to try out the Devastators and see how they are. But that's it. We're going to see what the list looks like when we put it on the table. We've kind of theory crafted it, but we'll see if it lives up to the details that I've kind of thought out of my brain.
All right, everybody, we are... Oh, hang on, I'm going to redo that. I need to see what mission we're playing. Scorched Earth. All right, everybody, if you are just tuning in to this Play the List, Test the List, go ahead and check out the list that we're going to be playing. Up in the pop-in, you can check out the Harlequin List, and coming up shortly after, you can check out the Ultramarine List. Today we are playing Scorched Earth. This is a 2,000-point game. We are practicing and testing lists before they are fully painted, so you will see models that are not painted, such as these, and that is because this is kind of the stages of testing lists. This is not a full battle report. We're going to kind of be doing summaries after phases and after turns, kind of saying how things are going, how they're working, how units are doing, and giving you guys an overview, our likes and dislikes about the army, the lists, and the units. So Scorched Earth is going to have 6 objectives. It's going to be take and hold, which is controlling 1 or more, 2 or more, and more than your opponent. For the secondaries, the Ultramarines have chosen While We Stand We Fight, which is going to be Guilliman, the Chaplain, and Tigurius. And then he's got Deploy Scramblers and Assassinate. We struggled really hard with both of these lists against each other to actually pick secondaries that we're comfortable with. And then as far as the Harlequins going, we've got Deploy Scramblers, Engage on All Fronts, and Assassinate. So we'll kind of see how that turns out. Thomas with the Ultramarines won the role to choose sides and deploy, and he also won the role to go first. So I've already spent 2 CP as Harlequins to redeploy. I redeployed a 10-man unit and put them into Deep Strike. So I spent a CP to redeploy a single unit and a CP to put it into Deep Strike. Harlequins is pretty cool that you can do that. So you can kind of see I'm over here in this corner, hiding as much as I can from the multi-meltas to outrange him with my -6 inches. So hopefully he won't get too much shooting off turn 1. And then as we look at him, he put a threat up here. I had my 10-man unit right over here. So that's kind of what forced me to pull it off. So if he didn't do that, I would have left him there. So he kind of forced me to burn 2 CP. So it's super smart by him. And then he's got everything kind of grouped up here. Any initial thoughts, Thomas, before we get into it?
Yeah, there's no way I could get to you range-wise once you start stacking guys back there without overextending to shoot with the -6. I got a lot of 24-inch guns even when I move up. So I really kind of had to be careful. You guys move so fast, you could assault me. Anything I kind of leave off on its own is in risk. So just kind of bunching up, kind of playing where the objectives are and seeing if I can push to one side. You kind of see on this particular deployment of the objectives, 3 objectives are kind of stacked on the hammer and anvil.
Yep.
So for my army, I really like to clump up, especially with Apothecary and his bubbles and Tigurius and his vulnerable bubbles.
Yep.
So you'll probably see me shift this way
Yep.
to just force his hand, keep 3 objectives, make him come and get me, and then let me use my power of Marine wounds and rerolls to kind of push through whatever you guys.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so we're going to go into the first turn. We'll be back with some recap stuff. Okay, so we're jumping into actually the bottom of 1. So Thomas, give us what you kind of did on your turn on the top of 1.
Yeah, so I couldn't reach him with the 24 inches without really overextending. I may be able to shoot one thing, so I definitely wasn't going to push up there and let him charge with his whole army. So instead, I just positioned everybody onto 3 objectives. So these guys strung out to get here. So I've got 3 objectives. So I'm forcing him to kind of take 3 objectives as well, or take one of mine away to get the primary. Otherwise, he's just going to concede, get me 15 on the first turn. I don't think he wants to do that.
Right.
And then I position everybody within 6 inches of Guilliman and of the Apothecary and Tigurius. So I've got the invulnerable save up. I got the 6 up, feel no pain. So now it's just kind of sit and wait. So Brad's turn, he's kind of positioned guys to kind of make an assault here. He advanced his warlord out of the box, so he can kind of charge over here to take away Overwatch, because I have my friends that can Overwatch with defensive focus. I could shoot multiple bikes, so I've kind of set it up that if he did come out of the booth, I could shoot both bikes here.
Yep.
But he's going to try to block that. And so so it's really a question of what's he going to shoot at?
What is that?
Are these bikes tough enough to take the charge?
Yep. And then I did do the 3 objectives, so I put guys on all 3 objectives to make sure that he's not getting the primary. So I had to overextend a little bit over here. I didn't want to do this, and I kind of just put my bikes out to be able to get shooting. We're going to try to soften up an ATV squad. I know I have to kill all 3. Now, if I don't kill all 3, it's a problem over here. So, I know that this is a suicide run over here for these guys. I have to see if it's enough to kill it. And it's something that we really want to test out to see, can this? These are the guys that have the kisses, so they're going to be D3 damage. I could buff them to be +1 as well. I'm hoping that I can do that. I got the Troop Master here to give them their reroll 1s. He came out of the transport. So that's what this squad is doing. We'll see if it pays off or not. It could be a really big mistake, so we'll find out. All right, so we did this stuff. Thomas, I made the charge and everything. Thomas did shoot Overwatch with the guys over here. I knew the rules. I didn't know the rules. I thought it was you had to be shooting Overwatch to do more Overwatch. And it's actually, you can choose up to 3 units to do Overwatch as if they were charged. So if I would have known that, I probably would have positioned my Death Jester to make it to where these guys couldn't shoot. And then my True Master would have charged the ones that were here around the corner. Yeah. So that's just something to learn, is make sure you know what the Overwatch rules are with everything and how they can shoot at you. So a little misplay. I lost 2 guys. It might not have mattered too much. And then what ended up happening is the True Master here finished off 1 ATV, carried a wound over to the other. I fought a lot of whiffs. He made a lot of saves. He swung back at me, killed another 3 guys actually. So 5 guys were down. I was forced to then fight again. So I burned 3 CP to fight again and 2 CP for the +1 damage. I was able to pick up the rest of the squad. At that point, I was just committed. So the lesson here was kind of, I was all in if I did not spend the CP to fight twice, he would have healed the wounded one, brought the other one back, and then it would have literally done all this commitment for nothing. I would have handed him these characters. I would have wasted CP. So instead, I knew I was there. I had to spend the extra CP. I'm down to 1 CP now. It was worth it because I got rid of the 3 ATVs. Would you agree or disagree with that, Thomas?
No, I think once you went in, you had to do it. So, like on the initial attack, like you said, the one troop master killed one wounded ATV, so it had 6 wounds. So he ended up doing, he
brought him down to 1, and then the mortal wound.
And then 2 mortal wounds.
Yeah.
He killed that guy and then plinked over. Then by looking at the way that when I pulled that casualty off, I could not interrupt because he wasn't in engagement range with the rest of the clowns. So actually, it worked out in his favor that I couldn't interrupt. So his 8 clowns got to pile in during his turn without me interrupting, and then hit the bikes. They did just enough, and I rolled hot on my saves. I think he did 11 wounds to me. I had -1s. These were only kisses.
Yeah, so they're only -1. They're living on 5s, and they're only -1, so it wasn't the best.
11 4-ups. I made 8. So it was fantastic. So I had a bike left with 1 wound. And again, kind of as he said, if he doesn't fight again, I D3 or I get flat 3 on that guy, and I bring another bike back. So I basically be at full strength.
Yeah.
For no investment on my part. So he fought again. Those guys were able to kill the entire rest of the unit. I think we talked about embraces or caresses or kisses.
just like what the difference is. Like, is the strength better? Is the AP better? Is the multiple damage better?
And I think having the caresses would have been better. Wounded on 4s rerolling instead of wounded on 5s rerolling would have been.
And -2, you'd be taking 5-ups instead of 4-ups.
Yeah, so you would have easily killed him on the first pass. I think with 2 damage.
I think so.
Yeah. So unless I rolled good, so I mean, D3 +1. That was pretty good.
It's good, but you got to get through. In the AP, you might get more through with the other weapons. So it's like it's like a trade-off, right? Like it may or may not work for you.
But he's done it. He's killed a unit of ATVs.
Yeah. So that was my plan. It worked. So yeah, we're gonna add up the score and go on to Thomas's and see how that goes.
All right. Bottom of my turn 2. A couple mistakes. I probably overdid it on what I needed to do to commit to kill those 5 clowns out in the open with his boss. I had +1 to hit and +1 to wound with this 10-man. They moved over to shoot at him. I got really lucky and hit with all 6 multi-meltas, even with -1 and only rerolling 1s. And I nuked that unit of bikes. Probably not the target I really needed to shoot at. Quite honestly, I should have shot at this transport that's full of guys. I did spend 2 CP to shoot these guys again, the intercessors. But shooting through the force and at another minus, even with my +1 to hit. Not a lot of hits. He only took 1 wound. Over here, I shot with my grab just to soften it up. I went in and charged it. It only had 1 wound. At the last second, I decided to kind of pull some guys back to be on that objective, so I didn't get the full swings. I flubbed my wound roll. He only had to take 1 save. He made it. So still alive. Kind of a pain. And then over here, these guys pulled back. Again, I kind of overcommitted to make sure. There's only 1 little window to see his little boss. So I pulled back to shoot through that window.
And your thought process was you should have moved them.
I should have just moved. Right? I should have just left them where they were, so they're on the objective.
To do deploy.
And then they could have just did deploy scramblers. So I don't have anyone doing deploy scramblers this turn in the midfield. It is a little risky to put him there. I don't want him to just run up and take both squads, but oh well. So that's it. So we're gonna see what Brad does next. It'll be interesting to see if he kind of pushes. Right now, I'm sitting on 4 objectives, so he's going to have to do something.
Yep. All right, so the Harlequins, on their turn, we kind of started to shift a little bit. So I wanted to pull this out of combat, but he could have used a stratagem to do mortal wounds. And because it only has 1 wound left, that was a little risky. So I gave up an engage over here. I really wanted to get the engage point, but I just would have overextended with that or with these bikes. These bikes came in. They just didn't do anything. They shot at the dev guys and do anything. They killed 1 guy here in combat. They don't really do that much when you miss in hits and when they don't have wounds to reroll. But we're just going to kind of threaten this. I was able to bring this squad in back here. They're just going to, go and threaten these 2 objectives in the future. So I'm okay with them being there. You can't really shoot at them right now, so it's okay. And then on the other side of the board, I really needed to get on these objectives. So I put a transport over here with guys in it. I put this guy here. I got my psychic powers off, but I perilled. And I couldn't use any rerolls on that because I don't want a chance at not going off. And I only had 2 CP and I really needed it to buff up some combat. So I did that. These guys were able to get -1 to hit and they were able to move. So now like they had this line of sight blocking here. He can't shoot at me, which is great. So like this is really big that I have this squad here protecting him and they're in a really good spot. And then I had 2 boats here with fusion still in it, alive with guys and everything. So like the next turn, they're going to be able to do even more work. I was able to pick up 2 ATVs and I got my charge off here. He lived with 2 wounds. I only got 1 wound through. I just whiffed everywhere. Like I really needed 1 more wound through on this guy to finish him. So now he's going to be able to heal stuff. He's going to be able to bring guys back. So we're going to see how he's going to have to position and do that. So I'm kind of okay with it. He's going to have to position kind of weird to do it and make some sacrifices. So overall, not the worst. I don't feel like I made too many mistakes in this turn. But overall, I think, making the decision on pulling back this way was probably the smarter play. If I would have pushed in the other direction, I think it would have made more mistakes and left him more availability to just run the primary a lot easier. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
All right, we're at the end of turn 3. Quickly, a lot of shooting happened. I was able to bring back an ATV. I healed that guy. They fell back and wanted to charge, but I spent a command point to do that, but I ended up pulling them back just a little too far, and then I didn't really need their charge. I was able to shoot and do enough damage here to wound that down to 1 bike. I charged those Vitrix in, killed the bike, and then consolidated here. I shot one of the transports and killed him down to 1 guy, hoping he would fail his morale. He didn't, so he still has an offset guy, so don't steal that from him. So he's going to get his points on primary. Over here, we were able to fall back from combat and between all the shooting, kill all those things. And then the grab guys were able to just peek around the corner with 1 guy, Cherub, and do some moves to that clown skull.
Did everything go how you planned? Was there anything you should have done different? I feel like you killed a lot of stuff.
I did kill a lot of stuff. I think it's all right. My initial plan was to really push this way onto the hammer and anvil. I kind of have these objectives, but I haven't. My main force is kind of hanging out right here, and this ruin is playing a big part. He still has another choppy unit and some more boats, but he's running out of forces here that throw at me, and most of my castle is still alive. So I feel like while I'm not really where I want to be, I'm still dictating the pace of the game and making him come to me. So that's what I want. So. And he's got to get to my character, so I need to leave these guys protected. I got my bubble. These 10-man intercessors are doing work, popping the double shoot stratagem. They're just cleaning up whatever falls out of stuff, and then just picking away wounds on transport. So even though the buggies, multi-builders are not doing much, it doesn't matter. That's a lot of shots. So that's what you want against clowns. So that's it. I think it's going well. We'll see what Brad can do.
All right, so despite what just happened and, kind of getting the bad end of the stick, what I did here is I spent my 1 CP to auto advance this guy 6. I blocked him from coming in here with his strategic reserve guys that he threw in there. And then on this side, I use this to block that. So I'm blocking him from getting anything into my deployment zone to get his last deploy scrambler. So that's going to put 10 points in my favor, which is really big. Then in my combat over here, I killed Tigurius, which was one of his While We Stand We Fight characters as well. So it's another 5 points and 3 points for my assassinate. And I ended up in engage in all fronts, so I got 3 points for that. So I thought that this was like 100% in him, and I just had a huge point swing this turn, like a whatever amount of point swing. And then I'm on 3 objectives, so he's going to get 10 on the primary. So we're going to just see what he can shoot this turn, what he can kill, and see what it kind of ends up as. All right, so going into that last turn, Thomas basically with the Ultramarines had to prevent me from getting any primary, any engage, and kill a single character. If he accomplished those 3 things, he would have won by 2 points or 1 point. So that's how close the game was going into that last turn. Unfortunately, he missed a bunch of hits and wounds onto the character. I made a couple saves on a vehicle. Stuff was left alive, so I ended up getting a little bit of primary. No characters died, and I got more engage. So the final score ended up being 61-70, which is pretty crazy because when I said that I didn't make that charge in turn 3, I was like, that it's over right there because he was just going to run over me. And even with those little things, I was able to make enough saves, move enough onto objectives, get behind cover. And honestly, it came down to the vehicle making the 6 saves against the multi-meltas, because then I was able to deny him deploy scramblers. So denying him those 10 points for deploy scramblers literally was the difference in the game by 1 point if he was able to get that stuff. So that plus the last ditch effort to kill a character, it was a lot of what ifs to try to do stuff, and I just had a big swing turn. So I think overall with this list, the interesting things with the Harlequins is I think the close combat weapons is what I think is my biggest takeaway for this. I don't think kisses are really worth it. The -1 AP is not enough for me, and it's strength 4, so like I think the caresses did the most work there. Even though that 10-man squad didn't get in very much, even at the end there when they had 5 guys alive and 4 guys alive, they were able to do a lot more without any re-rolling wounds. Just because they're wounding on 4s or 3s, depending on what they're going to be attacking. And the -2 AP is so much better than -1. So I think that's what I would look at for close combat. I mean, I know a lot of people want to mix stuff up, but I'm really just sticking to, I think I want to do like all of one close combat weapon because I think it's easier. I think you can plan around it a little bit better. So that's personally what I'm taking out of this. And then just to touch on like the one thing about Thomas's list is the buggies are really hard to kill. They come back alive. We saw that happen, right? It's what we expect. It's crazy, and he'll touch more on that. But the hidden gem of his list is the 10-man intercessor shooting twice and everything and moving across the table. So it's kind of like a switch and bait where I wanted to kill those ATVs, and if I would have maybe focused on the 10-man squad, I would have had a better time. But overall, playing a list like this, I think it's very interesting, and I think that I learned a lot. And really playing the entire game with no CP and being able to do that was really cool. So I need to now practice to be a little bit more cagey and a little bit more safe on my CP so that I don't just be super aggressive and burn it all in the first turn. But overall, I think the list is super solid. I'm just excited to get more games in on it. Thomas, what about your list?
Yeah, so touching on the buggies, the ATVs, we call them buggies around here just because they look like little Mario go-karts. They don't do a lot of damage. I mean, if you get hot on the multi-melter shots, and you are re-rolling one, so you got a little bit shot, you could do a lot of damage. But in general, they're just there to be annoying. They move fast. They can kind of move onto objectives. They're hard to get rid of. You're bringing them back. You're really trying to use them as a distraction or a force your opponent to shoot at them. And while the intercessors, the MVPs were doing work. They were just spending 2 CP to shoot again, double tapping, they're +1 to hit, +1 to wound, so they're really doing work. You really have to work hard, though, to manage that +1 to wound, just so it's the closest. Unfortunately, against Brad's army, he had -1 to hits everywhere and -1 to wounds everywhere, so it kind of canceled out my powers somewhat.
I mean, the -1 to wound on that character, which we didn't see.
Yeah.
All the melta shots that would be wounding on 2s missed.
I rolled.
So, like,
I hit with both multi meltas, and I rolled 2 2s to wound, and I was out of CP. And then I rolled 6 bolter shots, and I got 3 wounds through, but they were all 3s, so they all missed. He only had 1 wound left, so like I just needed to make him take a save, and it wasn't even there. And then just I just got a little overzealous on the last turn, really thinking I had the game in the bag, and I tried to get a little bit greedy to get a couple more points killing his other character. So I didn't really contingency think it all the way through till it was too late. And then I got caught out on the -6 inches on that Shadow Seer. Yeah. So when I went to shoot the bikes, turned out only one bike was in range with the -6 because their range is only 24 inches. And I had a little bit more movement, so I could have easily moved up. But when he came in with the 5-man, he was really just going to pull back and get on an objective. And he realized that if he went all in on Tigurius, that was going to take 5 points from, while we stand, we fight. I could have easily ran Tigurius away. I was just like, I need to give him a 5-up informal save.
I didn't even think about it until after I killed him either. I was like, which character do I kill? And then I just luckily chose that one. Right?
I was like, there's no reason for him to be there. He should be away. He should be away. And just really thinking it through, like from a tournament perspective, it just takes one mistake against a good player to lose. And, we both on our ends made a lot of mistakes. So that's what it's all about for tournament testing, tournament lists. Just looking out for those gotchas in your own list, when to push, when to not overextend, how to protect your characters if you have auras, when it's important to need the buffs, and when it's not. It's kind of, in my nature to make sure everyone stays alive. And I'm like, in that case, it didn't matter at all. Like I could have lost a bunch of guys there, and losing him was lost, a lot of points. And then just the point scramblers, I missed 2 turns of when I should have did it, and then I didn't jump into reserves till later, and then that guy making all those saves against one multi melt that goes through, and then now I have a hole to get into play scrambler. So great move on Brad's part. I'm still in shock that he stole the game away from me. So that's what you get. You gotta play these games out. Sometimes when things look bleak, you can capitalize on an opponent's mistake, or you can pull something out where you thought it wasn't going to be there.
And that's something too, where like if your opponent just gets overzealous and is like, "Oh, I got this in the bag now," they're going to overlook how they're moving, what they're doing and stuff. And then if you capitalize on that, and it's just like you catch them off guard and they go, "Oh man, I thought this game was 100% mine." And then it's like, well, you overlooked these couple things, right? So you got to watch out.
Yeah. So I think that's it. I mean, if you like this type of format, let us know. We're definitely interested in trying it out. Again, we played tons of games here, so we thought there was some good content here, some good kind of learnings, even on the games where we don't have everything fully painted, because we're trying to test stuff and get stuff painted for you guys for the full battle reports. But we wanted to, kind of showcase some of the games that you weren't seeing, and then kind of get some of the newer movements and new lists out there that we were kind of taking to the tournament. So if you like tournament play, if you like this, let us know in the comments if we should do more of these. And if you would like to see certain lists, we could potentially pull out more lists for you to try out. So let us know. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.